Well, we've had a lot of soft deadlines for the Pac-12 media deal come and go. Are there any hard deadlines? Not technically, but really there should be one.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with our media rights free, as always, and beloved Conference of Champions. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, please and thank you wherever you listen to or watch this show. Football talk, little Pac-12 future potpourri coming later in the show. A couple questions to answer there, but the one that I'm answering at this moment is there a hard deadline for the Pac-12 media deal? Not technically. Not legally speaking. There is no date in which if you don't have a deal by this day, then the deal cannot get done. There has not been, to our knowledge, a hard deadline given by any school in particular in which they say, have a deal done by this date or we are going to go take the Big 12 up on their offer to go join the conference. We haven't seen anything like that. But as I look at the prospect of when this will get done, and I have absolutely no idea, and I'm going to play a fun game with that in a moment, and it's going to involve a lot of you in the YouTube comment section, or you'll be able to hit me up on Twitter. I'll explain that in just a sec. But the only thing that matters now for the Pac-12 is getting a deal before the season starts. That is where it would get even worse. It would feel worse. It would be worse than it is. It's already not an ideal situation. I know the internal confidence continues to remain high, is what more than one person has reported on multiple occasions. And I know that George Kliavkoff said, the longer we wait, the better our options get. And I know they talk in that. I know they say this stuff, but you can't tame the waters or calm the waters and tame public opinion on your conference until you have an actual deal that is done. And that you don't just have a grant of rights verbally agreed to, which reportedly they do. You have one that is actually written, signed, and agreed upon by all parties involved. So that has to be done. And you can't go into, look, perhaps technically you can start the season without one, but holy smokes, would that be an even worse look? That's why I say it's the only hard deadline, so to speak. Because you can't go into the season talking about anything but football. It will be the topic that every broadcast of a Pac-12 game, not on Pac-12 Network, in which the Pac-12 Conference is paying said announcers, so they can tell them, hey, you're not talking about this sort of stuff. They don't have that sort of control over the announcers at ESPN and Fox, or on any other platform in which a Pac-12 team is playing. You know, the SEC Network is going to be airing the Mississippi State and Arizona game in week 2. They have no control over what those announcers say, or all the other announcers, or all the fans. That's the only hard deadline that I see, though. But we're going to play a game. We're going to play a game, and you're all welcome to participate, and it will be first come, first serve. Do you remember the game Pin the Tail on the Donkey? It's like an old kind of classic, has definitely fallen out of style, birthday party kids game. You blindfold someone, and they go and they try to pin the tail on the donkey as closely as they can to the most accurate place, which, as you think about it, is kind of weird and probably is why it has gone away. But anyway, that's what we're going to kind of do here. We're going to play pin the date on when the Pac-12 media deal will get announced. And I have said for quite some time, and continue to believe, that there is as good of a chance that it drops tomorrow as August 26th. before the season starts. Actually, I think there's a game on August 26th. I think that's when USC plays San Jose State, and I am correct. So August 25th would be the last day to get a deal completed, announced, signed, and everything before you would have a football broadcast in which the talking point is going to come up that overshadows the game. And it's just going to be on everybody's minds. And we don't want that. So the window you have to choose from is between now and August 25th. And everybody can pick one day. Once a day has been selected, I will write it down in my notes. And then that date will no longer be available to you. And everybody can pick a day. And whoever wins will get a shout out on the show. I don't really have anything else to offer. I will make some grand statement about you being a predictor of truth and knowledge and wisdom, right? Or something grandiose like that. Something like what's written on the champion belt of the heists in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Something to that effect. So, I am going to choose August 17th. So August 17th is off the board. And I didn't even have first pick here because this idea came from Eric, who is an everydayer out there. So YouTube comments or Twitter, you can hit me up at Smalls_55 or at LO_Pac-12. You can pick any day. Any day. I am going with August 17th. I'm going to double check that's not that's a Thursday. I like that. Thursday, August 17th. That's my day. Eric has got August 7th. That's a Monday. And you all can pick whichever day you want if you would like in on it and the opportunity to get shouted out and majorly complimented for your fortune-telling skills right here on the show. Any day between, and frankly, if you don't think it'll be done by the time the season starts, by all means, pick September 21st. I don't care. No downside there. So that's what we're doing because that's where we're at. Because this is the insanity that we have kind of been driven to at this point. That's where we're at. So we might as well make the most out of it. And I think this is the best way to make the most out of it. Let's play a game with it. Why not? I'm sure the deal will come at some point. And I'm going with August 17th. So August 17th and the 7th, those are off the board. Again, YouTube comments, it'll be first come, first serve. And it will be, I check the comments section a couple times a day. It'll be when I check the comments, the order in which they are left on there, and YouTube tells me when they were left, and they're also put in descending order and such. So that will be how I determine who has, if someone puts August 8th, and I look at the comment and it was 4 hours ago, but then someone said August 8th and it was 6 hours ago, I'm going to give it to the person who said put the comment in there 6 hours ago. So pick your dates. We'll see who ends up winning, and then let me know afterwards. I'm actually kind of excited for this. I think this is fun. All right. So much fun. Colorado is going to be a fun team to watch. But what's the big question for Colorado? They wouldn't have any question about job seekers if they were checking out LinkedIn Jobs, because these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Just go in there, create a free job post in minutes, add the purple #hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We are back post second segment sip, which means we are just refreshed, revitalized, and refurbished to continue with the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, if you haven't already, Like, comment, subscribe, wherever you listen to or watch the show. I appreciate all of you out there, especially the everydayers who tune in every single day to the show. Very much appreciate you having been along this wonderful, grand, and glorious journey with me. So, let's talk about Colorado for a moment. What's the big question for Colorado? What's the biggest thing that's going to define their season and the sort of success that they are going to have? So Colorado has brought in the number 1 rated transfer portal class in the country in 2023. Also brought in a top 30 high school recruiting class, mind you. Guys like Dylan Edwards, Cormani McLean, Omarion Miller, those sorts of guys coming from the high school ranks have great potential. They got a bunch of 3-stars in there and then some headline blue chippers, some of those guys I just mentioned. But the transfer portal class is quite something. And when you look at all the positions that they have brought in, you go down the list: running back, strong side defensive end, safety, running back, receiver, safety. You got some linemen in there. But overwhelmingly, the guys who are expected to be the most impactful players are often skill position guys. Shedeur Sanders, quarterback. Travis Hunter, defensive back and wide receiver. You just kind of keep going down the list. I think the biggest question for Colorado in 2023 is, what do you actually have in the trenches? A lot of players in there, a lot of names. But part of the reason Colorado struggled so much a year ago, and that Deion Sanders has had to undergo this massive overhaul of the roster, is because they didn't have guys anywhere, frankly. But building up a trench unit, offensive or defensive line, I think is a lot tougher to do in one season than revitalizing your skill position players. Because you bring in a quarterback, you bring in a wide receiver, that's all good and fine. Those guys can come in, contribute right away. A running back can make an impact. But an offensive line, and a defensive line to an extent, but especially an offensive line, that's a unit. That's a group of guys who, when they are operating at their best, have been together for quite some time. That's a group of guys who know how each other think, who are familiar with the quarterback, who are familiar with the offensive coordinator, who understand the calls, who understand the play, who understand everything. An offensive line is really hard to scramble and put together in 1 year. And on the defensive side of the ball, they had a long way to go. Having guys like Cormani McLean and Travis Hunter, if those end up being your 2 starting corners, those are really, really talented dudes. They would start on a lot of Pac-12 teams. But I think the question, and the reason, frankly, that Colorado's win total, despite having the top portal class in the country, is as low as it is at 3.5, is twofold. Number one, their schedule is tough. Their first 2 conference games are at Oregon and hosting USC. That's probably 0-2 in Pac-12 play. They've got 2 Power 5 non-conference opponents. You know the other Pac-12 team that has that? Utah. Nobody else is playing a pair. UCLA is not playing any Power 5 non-conference opponents. That's because Michigan bailed on him. You know, that same Michigan team that has now got Jim Harbaugh suspended, and their 4 games are against, let me think here, East Carolina, Bowling Green, UNLV, and Rutgers. Boy, they had that one. They had that one planned out for quite some time. But they bailed on UCLA. Should have been playing a home and home in 2022 and 23, and they said no thanks. UCLA couldn't find a Power 5 game. This is part of the reason I think scheduling in college football is the biggest problem in the sport. Be that as it may. Colorado playing at TCU and hosting Nebraska, I do think is a factor in why their win total is 3.5, which until very recently was the lowest in the conference. Now it's Stanford at 2.5. But they had the same win total until very recently when Stanford got downgraded and the California Golden Bears got upgraded. If you're new here, I've been bullish on Cal going over 4.5 wins for a long time, and then FanDuel upgraded their win total to 5.5, and I became very happy. Anyway, so I think that with Colorado, if they had UCLA's schedule, for instance, yeah, I think they could push to be a bowl team perhaps, or they would have a better chance of doing so at least. If they had Washington State's conference schedule, in which they didn't play USC or Utah, yeah, I think that could be an advantage for them. But Colorado's schedule sets up in a very difficult way. They have to play Oregon, and they have to play Utah and USC in the South. Got to play UCLA as well. It's hard to find a lot of wins on their schedule this year when Nebraska and TCU are their non-conference opponents. That Nebraska game is going to be really interesting because they're also rebuilding. TCU, I don't see Colorado having a chance there. Neither does Vegas. The line's hovering around 20 points. And I think the fundamental reason is not an indictment on Coach Prime or the staff that he's put together or Shedeur Sanders at the quarterback position or anything like that. I think that it's a reflection of what I was just talking about as the big question for Colorado. What are you going to have in the trenches? Are you going to be able to protect Shedeur Sanders? Because having a talented player at quarterback doesn't mean a darn thing if he's running for his life all the time. Bo Nix down at Auburn was running for his life all the time, and guess what? He never reached his full potential. He goes to Oregon behind a great offensive line, and he sets the Oregon single-season completion percentage record. So if you don't have a unit in front of you that can keep you upright, that can keep you, from being under duress all the time. Look at Michael Penix at Washington, another great example. He was at Indiana. He got hurt all the time. You know why? He was running for his life, and he took a lot of hits. He goes to Washington, one of the best offensive lines in the country last year, and he leads the nation in passing. I don't think that's a Colorado team, or that this is a Colorado team that is set up and capable of protecting Shedeur Sanders like that, or giving them a dominant run game. But what do they have there? Because as you look at what their schedule has, there are some games where you can see them winning that are, toss-ups of a sort. But those games could very well come down to what does your offensive line do versus their defensive line? Can you create pressure and havoc at all up front? Because defensively, it's a complete and total reset. And you bring in a bunch of players from the portal. How many of them are going to be able to contribute? How many of them are going to be able to perform at a high level? Is Colorado, here's another way of looking at it. They have no preseason all-conference offensive or defensive linemen. Colorado, on the first or second team. Could they have one on either side of the ball by the end of the year? Maybe. If somebody pops and has a great season, but right now it's a question mark. Doesn't mean it can't be done. It means that we don't have any guarantees that it will be done. And there are very few guarantees on this Colorado team overall. Travis Hunter is a really talented player. Shedeur Sanders has got a big arm at quarterback. Looks like he could be a good quarterback in the Pac-12. That's about it as far as guarantees go. Even a 5-star recruit like Cormani McLean hasn't played a snap of college football yet. Heck, Travis Hunter even hasn't played a snap of college football at the Power 5 level. Now, he is someone who would probably be starting on basically every Pac-12 team at this point in time. So it's reasonable to assume, given his athletic prowess, that he's going to be able to succeed at least somewhat. But we still don't know. You don't know for certain. You know how many times a 5-star recruit has gotten to the Power 5 level and has been just kind of an average player? Travis Hunter is preseason all-conference for the defensive back and in the return game. We have no idea if he's going to fully adapt and play wide receiver all the time, if he'll do it sometimes. We have no idea what he's going to look like against the Pac-12. That's one of the things that makes the season so compelling. So I think that that's a smaller storyline, but the bigger one is, if you're Colorado, what are you going to have in the trenches? Are you going to be able to stop physical run teams that want to pound the ball a little bit? Oregon went into Boulder last year and won 49-10, and they ran the ball in a big, big way. Are they going to be able to do that again? How much better is your defense going to be? I expect it to be better, but how much better? I expect your offense to be better, but how much better? They were last in the Pac-12 in both a season ago. I expect them to improve, but how much they're able to improve on either side of the ball, I think comes down to what they're able to get from their guys in the trenches. I think that's the big question that is lingering around Colorado as we get ready for the 2023 season, which is right around the corner. Goodness gracious. I can't wait for football. I am so very excited. I'm also excited to get to the mailbag. I love the mailbag. It's really fun. You go into YouTube comments or on Twitter at smalls_55 or at LO_Pac-12. You ask me a question. You get it answered here on the show. And we have this great little dynamic and back and forth and such. You're a part of the show. I'm thinking about things that I might not be thinking. I don't have every interesting thought in the world. I don't have a monopoly on that. That's where all you come in. So let's start with this one from Chainsaw Killers. Off the subject and getting ahead of the narrative, I have a question. If the Pac is at 10 teams for the 2024-25 football season, how will it impact the bowls they are committed to provide teams to? So the answer is not a whole heck of a lot. You might have one lower level bowl game that would no longer have a solid commitment, but if you go and look at the bowl game matchups and how they get decided at the end of every season, what you have is, certain bowl games are Pac-12 number 2 against Big 12 number 3 or something like that. But there are a lot of them that have kind of a slash to indicate or, and there are always mechanisms in place in the event that a conference doesn't have as many teams bowl eligible, or if a conference has more teams bowl eligible, it always shakes out. And with the 12 team playoff in 2024, the Pac-12 champion is almost assuredly going to be one of the 6 highest rated conference champions if it is at 10 teams. So they would get one in there. And then all of the bowl assignments and whatnot, which I assume shift around a touch with the 12 team playoff, given that they, are playing more of the major bowl games and incorporating them directly into the playoff postseason there, which I am, of course, staunchly against, but I don't ever get what I want. I would like, a 4-team playoff, maybe 6, and I would like the Pac-12 media deal to materialize. I'm not going to get either of those things. Well, at least not yet. The Pac-12 media deal, we think it's close by. Wink. So, not very much. Another question here from Jared. I had a light bulb moment listening to you. What if the I love that. You had a light bulb moment listening to me? That means I'm doing something right. Cool. All right. I had a light bulb moment listening to you. What if the Pac guarantees more games between them and the Mountain West as a sort of payment to get San Diego State earlier? Not a bad thought. Not a bad thought at all. And the reason is that for those of you who don't know this, I'm sure many of you do, but anytime a Power 5 school schedules a football game with a G5 opponent, if it's not a home and home, which it rarely is, it can be, but if it's not a home and home, generally the Power 5 school is paying money to the G5 school. So what he's suggesting here is, hey, San Diego State's exit fee after June 30th and after the extension, which the Pac-12 wasn't able to get a deal done by, is now $34 million. But what if, to help bring that number down so that San Diego State could leave the conference, what if the Pac-12 agreed as a league to a certain number of bye games with the Mountain West so that they are getting that money kind of through a back channel there, and then exposure playing in Power 5 teams, opportunities for upsets, of course, and all the benefits that come with that. Not a bad thought whatsoever. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that could be something the Pac-12 might, try and sweeten the pot if they were to get involved with negotiations between San Diego State and the Mountain West, and San Diego State saying, hey, we want to leave, but we want to, not pay as much. Pac-12 could say, what if we gave you this? Now, the place where this gets tricky is I don't know how many more games the Pac-12 would have available to offer, because the conference already has a lot of matchups with Mountain West schools. San Diego State is playing Oregon State this year. They played Arizona last year. They played Utah the year before. So what my point is that every school, and again, this goes back to scheduling being so backwards in so many ways, every school gets to basically determine their own non-conference schedule and who they're matched up with. So in the short term, I'm not sure as to whether the Pac-12 schools who would be participating in said bye games would have the space on their schedules to fit them in. Now, if they did, then maybe that could work. But it would be contingent upon that fact. Because if you go to the Mountain West and say, hey, we'll give you 3 more, if you let San Diego State come in for, $22 or $24 million, let's say it's $22 million and they pay $5 million extra than the 17 and whatnot. But we give you, X amount of games per year. And again, this is just a hypothetical. Don't get too hung up on the numbers. I just say that because I know how the comment section works. But let's say it was $5 million more than 17, so it was 22, and they said, hey, we'll give you 3 games a year for the next 3 years that we weren't otherwise going to give you. You then have to determine who those games are going to be against, and having it be between San Diego State, if they were to then join the Pac-12, that would kind of defeat the purpose. So, and whoever they would bring in as well, SMU probably wouldn't want to be a part of that either, because they want to get the best possible. I mean, maybe, but I don't know that SMU would be paying. They could. They do have a lot of money, but let's just assume that it would just be the 10 remaining schools. The 10 remaining schools already have plans for who their future non-conference opponents are going to be. A lot of them know their Power 5 non-conference opponents through like 2032. A lot of them have non-conference G5 matchups set for the next several years. So I'm not sure if they could get out of those and then go and commit to playing games against the Mountain West. But if they could, it could be a pot sweetener. I don't think it could, stand on its own, but I think it could, to tilt the scales, but I think it could be something to kind of sweeten the pot if the Pac-12 were to try and, offer some sort of incentive to the Mountain West to give the Aztecs a reduced rate from the $34 million that their athletic director, J.D. Wickers, said, yeah, we can't pay that. And that's a lot of money. So you kind of understand why. But again, Jared, really good thought. The logistics would be tricky, but the spirit of it, yeah, I don't see why not. If it would help, it should be considered. Okay, last thing here. This from David. Spencer, great program as always. Appreciate you. One thing that has not been stressed enough, is what he's searching for, is the decision not to expand in basketball. The Pac is without question the worst Power 5 school at hoops. That is very true. And you can make the argument that they're behind the Big East as well. Can make the argument they're way behind the Big East. The Big East just won the national championship. We haven't played in one of those in a while. So he's right. This is before UCLA leaves. Great point. Yeah, basketball is... Yeah. Okay. You will have Arizona and maybe ASU, and that is it. Oregon is usually good under Dana Altman. We'll see if he's able to get things back on track. But to wrap up David's question here, or to ask the question, why Gonzaga is not being considered to shore up basketball makes no sense to me. May I have your thoughts on this? So, consideration number 1 as to why the Zags won't be there, they don't have football. So a basketball-only membership is not something the Pac-12 is going to consider, because it is not a basketball-crazed conference like the Big 12 that loves basketball. And the second component of why they wouldn't add a basketball-only school is that the rough approximation could go up in the future. That's what the Big 12 is kind of banking on or wanting to have happen. And look, it could. It's not the craziest thing I've ever heard. The idea is that around 15% is the amount of value that college basketball brings to a media deal, which is not a lot. It's not nothing. It's not something to completely ignore, but it is not the bulk of what makes up a conference's media rights valuation. So I hear you. Like, from a geography standpoint, they're in the state of Washington. Of course that fit. The only Power 5 schools in the country, in the state of Washington, are in the Pac-12. So of course that would make sense. They would absolutely become, along with Arizona, the best program in the conference, consistently year in and year out, right now, today, and have been for the last several years. No doubt about that. But they don't add enough value. The Pac-12 is not crazy about basketball anyway, and the academic component, they're not there. They're not. I don't believe they're a big research university. They are not an AAU school. Like they're just not. I'm just making sure on the AAU thing. I don't believe they are, but they're just not the sort of school that the Pac-12 would look at. But honestly, I don't even think the academics are what are holding them back as much as the fact that they don't have football and that the Pac-12 is just not a huge basketball conference. They would provide value to the league's basketball product, absolutely. And going forward, basketball is in a tough. I mean, no USC, UCLA, those have been perennial tournament teams, and the Pac just hasn't had very many of those. They just haven't. Like, we are easily the worst of the Power Six in college basketball. Easily. Our women's basketball kicks butt. Stanford wins, has won a national championship. There are a bunch of great teams in there. But on the men's side, it is weak sauce. It has been for a while. Doesn't look like that's changing anytime super soon. By the way, best wishes to Bronny James, USC commit who had a cardiac incident. Thankfully, he's okay, and hopefully we'll be able to get better. That was just a crazy, scary piece of news. But yeah, that's the crux of it. Is basketball only, no appeal, don't love basketball in the Pac, and it just doesn't add enough value to the media deal to make that worth it. I would be intrigued by it, but I'm not on the front lines clamoring for it because you're trying to get the best media deal possible, and I don't think that they'd be able to bring enough to the table on that front. Great questions. Keep them coming, as always. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.